Scotland's islands aren't just picturesque. They hide dark, eerie secrets that have haunted the land for centuries. Discover the chilling tales of ghostly apparitions, ancient curses, and disappearances that still unsettle visitors today. 1. Flannan Isles, the vanishing lighthouse keepers. In the Flannan Isles, the ocean roars with a dark, menacing presence. The year was 1900 when 3 lighthouse keepers, tending the isolated beacon, mysteriously vanished without a trace. The sea seemed to swallow them whole, but what was left behind told a haunting story. Their quarters were found locked from the inside, dinner half-eaten, and their oil lamps still flickering despite no one being around. The lighthouse itself stood as silent as a tomb, yet there was no sign of struggle and no bodies washed ashore. Over time, rumors began to spread. Locals spoke of strange lights on the island at night, flickering in a pattern as though trying to communicate. Others claimed to have heard the faint sounds of voices carried on the wind, calling out in desperate desperation. One stormy night, a group of fishermen reported seeing shadowy figures standing on the cliffs, gazing toward the sea. No one dared approach. The spirits of the missing keepers seemed trapped on the desolate island, their souls forever lingering in the fog, searching for a way to return. 2. Isle of Rum, the Phantom Piper. The Isle of Rum carries with it an air of melancholic mystery. Long ago, a young piper, heartbroken by unrequited love, played his mournful tunes in the hills, hoping the music would heal his sorrow. But as his love faded, so did his life. He disappeared into the wild landscapes, never to be seen again. The sound of his haunting melody, carried by the wind, is said to still echo through the island. On quiet, foggy mornings, hikers have often reported hearing faint bagpipe music drifting from the hills, growing louder as they approach the peak. The music is so clear, so painfully beautiful, that it almost seems to lure them deeper into the island's heart. But when they turn a corner or reach the source of the sound, there is nothing but empty air. One wanderer who ventured further along the cliffs reported hearing the music crescendo until it seemed to surround him, only to suddenly stop. As he looked around, a shadowy figure was seen standing on the rocks, holding a bagpipe. As the wind howled, the figure disappeared into the mist, leaving nothing but an eerie silence. Some say the piper still searches for his lost love, his soul forever bound to the island. 3. Orkney Islands, the Viking spirits. Orkney Islands, with their rich Viking history, are a perfect breeding ground for ghostly tales of ancient warriors. It's said that after a bloody battle, the spirits of the fallen warriors were trapped in a never-ending cycle, unable to find peace. Travelers have reported hearing the sounds of distant war drums, the clash of swords, and the haunting battle cries of Vikings long gone. Some claim to have seen spectral warriors marching through the fog, their faces hidden behind iron helmets. On stormy nights, it's said the spirits of these warriors come alive, walking the hills as though preparing for another raid. A local historian once spent the night near the ruins of an ancient Viking fort. At dusk, he claimed to hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind him, following him through the ruins. As he turned around, there was nothing but mist. But then, the sound of clanging armor grew louder, followed by the unmistakable whisper of a battle cry. The historian rushed back to the safety of his vehicle, but the echoes of the warriors' footsteps followed him, fading into the night. Many believe these warriors will never rest, their eternal struggle bound to the lands of Orkney. 4. Shetland Islands, the ghost of the woman in white. The Shetland Islands are home to a haunting tale of a woman still searching for her lost love. Once a young bride awaiting her husband's return from a fishing trip, a storm sank the ship and claimed the lives of all aboard. When she learned of his death, the woman wandered the cliffs in grief, until the sea claimed her as well. Now, her spirit lingers, forever searching for the love she lost. Locals say she can be seen standing on the cliffs, gazing out to sea, waiting for the ship that will never return. Some say they hear her cries on stormy nights, carried by the wind as if pleading for help. Sailors have reported seeing her ghostly figure on dark nights, her white gown billowing in the wind, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Those who venture too close often feel an intense chill and an overwhelming sense of sorrow. The feeling is so oppressive it has caused people to flee the island in terror. Legend has it that if you look into her eyes, you may become lost to the sea, joining her in the endless search for her lost love. 5. Isle of Eigg, the massacre of the 16th century. The Isle of Eigg carries a tragic history, a massacre in the 16th century that left the island's residents dead and their spirits cursed to wander the island forever. After a brutal betrayal, an entire village was slaughtered by invaders. It is said that their souls were never given the peace they deserved, and their restless spirits now roam the island. Many who have visited the island report hearing faint cries in the night, voices whispering their names from the shadows, or the sound of footsteps following them in the dark. One traveler who stayed on the island at dusk reported feeling a cold presence behind them, as though they were being watched. As they looked back, a shadow darted across the rocks, too fast to be a human figure. They followed the shadow to the edge of a cliff, where they heard a voice whisper, "Leave now." When they turned to run, they swore they saw several spectral figures standing at the top of the hill, watching them with hollow eyes. The ghostly figures seemed to melt into the mist before they could take another step, leaving the traveler terrified and unsettled. It's believed that the spirits of those killed in the massacre are cursed to walk the land, seeking justice that will never come. 6. Isle of Harris, the ghostly shipwreck. The Isle of Harris is famous for its rugged coastline, but it also hides a darker secret, the ghost of a shipwreck that still haunts the waters. The tale is of a ship that sank off the island's shore centuries ago, with all of its crew lost to the sea. Their spirits, trapped in the watery depths, now roam the shores, unable to find peace. Sailors still report seeing a phantom ship appear from the mist, its sails tattered and torn, its crew ghostly and transparent. The eerie sight is often accompanied by the sound of chains dragging in the water, as though the ship is still sinking. One fisherman, caught in thick fog, swore he saw the ghostly ship on a calm night. He tried to row closer, but as he neared, the ship suddenly disappeared into the mist. It was replaced by a loud crash from the water, as though the ship had sunk again, only to rise again and continue its haunting journey. The crew of the phantom ship are said to be trapped in an endless loop, doomed to sail the waters near Harris for eternity. Some say the ship seeks a way to end its curse, while others believe it will never be free. 7. Isle of Jura, the murderer's haunt. The Isle of Jura is notorious for its dark past, and it is here that a chilling tale of murder and ghostly hauntings began. The story is told of a man who, after committing horrific crimes, was murdered by the island's residents in retaliation. But the man's soul could not find peace. His ghost is said to roam the island, forever seeking vengeance on those who took his life. Several hikers who ventured into Jura's forests have reported strange sightings, shadowy figures that seem to flicker at the edges of their vision, disappearing whenever they look directly. One group of travelers set up camp near an old stone ruin. That night, they woke to the sound of footsteps outside their tent. The steps grew closer, louder, until they could hear the rasping breath of a figure standing just beyond their tent. When they ventured outside to confront it, the figure vanished, but the air remained thick with unease. The murderer's spirit remains on Jura, forever roaming the woods, seeking retribution. 8. Isle of Skye. The Cailleach. The Hag of Skye. The Isle of Skye holds many tales of spirits, but none are as terrifying as that of the Cailleach, a giantess who turned into a hag after her death. Once a powerful, supernatural being, she now roams the hills and valleys, her presence signaled by a cold wind that sweeps through the island. Travelers who venture into Skye's wilderness report hearing strange wails on the wind, ghostly cries that seem to echo off the cliffs. Some believe that these cries belong to the Cailleach, foretelling bad weather or disaster. One night, a hiker found himself lost on Skye, wandering the hills in search of a way down. As he neared a ridge, he heard the wailing of a woman, her voice carrying through the night. He looked out into the mist and saw the massive silhouette of a woman standing on the cliffs, her eyes glowing red in the moonlight. When he tried to approach, the figure vanished, leaving only the wind and a feeling of intense dread. The Cailleach is said to be an omen, appearing to those who are destined for disaster, forever wandering the island in her final, cursed form. 9. Isle of Coll, the ghost of the drover. The Isle of Coll is home to a restless spirit, the ghost of a drover who was killed while tending to his cattle. His spirit has never left the island, and now he is said to wander the hills, seeking his lost herd. Travelers have heard the sound of hooves in the distance, followed by the apparition of a man walking beside invisible cattle. One tourist, taking a walk along the cliffs at sunset, noticed a figure in the distance walking along the trail. As they drew closer, the figure appeared clearer. A man dressed in old, tattered clothes, walking with a herd that wasn't there. When the tourist called out, the figure turned and their eyes locked. The traveler felt a chill run down their spine as the man slowly faded into the air, leaving behind only the soft sound of hooves. The drover's spirit remains on Coll, forever searching for his lost cattle. His presence is felt by anyone who ventures too close to the hills, and it's said that those who linger too long may never leave. 10. St. Kilda. The haunted village. The abandoned village of St. Kilda has long been known for its eerie atmosphere. The village was deserted in the 1930s, leaving behind empty houses and a haunting silence. But the spirits of the villagers have never left. Visitors to the island report strange occurrences, cold winds sweeping through the abandoned homes, flickering lights in windows that haven't been opened in decades, and the feeling of being watched. One explorer, walking through the empty streets, suddenly felt an intense pressure on their chest. They looked around but saw no one. The temperature dropped, and they could feel the presence of someone, or something, behind them. When they turned, they saw nothing but shadows stretching long across the ground. Yet, the feeling of being followed remained. The spirits of the village continue to linger, trapped in the place where they once lived. Their souls are bound to the island, never to leave. 11. Isle of Unst. The Phantom Ship. The Isle of Unst, located in the Shetlands, is home to a tale that sends chills down the spine of anyone familiar with it. Sailors claim that on foggy nights, they can see the outline of a ghostly ship drifting in the waters near the island. The ship, with tattered sails and a creaking hull, is always just out of reach. In the early 1900s, a fisherman was said to have followed the phantom ship for hours. As he drew closer, he noticed strange figures aboard, but when he tried to approach, the ship vanished, leaving only ripples in the water. Legend has it that the ship is crewed by the souls of sailors lost in the waters surrounding Unst, each one a lost soul trying to find its way home. A local woman claims to have seen the ship as well while walking along the cliffs at night. She described seeing the dim light of lanterns flickering on the ship's deck and hearing eerie voices carried by the wind. When she looked back, the ship was gone, leaving her with an overwhelming sense of dread. Many believe that the ship never fully sank, and its crew is still trapped, forever sailing the foggy waters of Unst. 12. Isle of Canna, the curse of the cliffs. The Isle of Canna, known for its rugged cliffs and serene beauty, hides a much darker side, a tragic curse that has haunted the island for generations. The curse dates back to a betrayal that took place hundreds of years ago, when a group of travelers was stranded on the island after a storm. After a failed attempt to escape, they were led to the cliffs, where they were pushed to their deaths by a treacherous local guide. Their bodies were never recovered. Ever since, anyone who ventures too close to the cliffs at night reports seeing the figures of those who died, standing at the edge of the rocks, staring out over the sea. One night, a group of hikers visited Canna and camped near the cliffs. As the wind picked up, they saw strange figures walking toward the edge of the cliffs. They shouted for the figures to stop, but the figures did not respond. Instead, they simply turned and walked straight into the air, vanishing as they fell into the abyss below. The hikers quickly left the island, and none of them spoke of the event again. But the curse of the cliffs remains, and it is said that anyone who dares venture too close at night will see the souls of those who perished, trapped in an endless fall. 13. Isle of Skye, the fairy pools and the lurking shadows. Skye's fairy pools are known for their beauty, clear, sparkling waters and picturesque surroundings that attract visitors from all over the world. But beneath this serene surface, a darker tale lurks. It is said that the fairy pools are haunted by shadowy creatures who prey on those who wander too far into the waters. Locals tell of a woman who disappeared near the pools. She had been drawn to the water by an irresistible urge, as if something was calling to her. Her friends tried to stop her, but when they turned to leave, they found that the ground around the pools had become slick with a strange mist. The woman's body was found days later, but her eyes were wide open and her face was twisted in terror. It's said that the shadows near the pools claim their victims by feeding off their fear, and that anyone who steps into the water might become the next victim of the shadowy creatures lurking beneath the surface. Some say that if you're unlucky enough, the shadow will follow you, hiding just behind you, waiting to strike. 14. Isle of Bute, the lady in the graveyard. The Isle of Bute is home to many legends, but one of the most chilling is the tale of the lady in the graveyard. The story begins with a widow whose husband was tragically killed at sea. Unable to bear the loss, she wandered the island in search of a way to bring him back. She visited the graveyard where her husband was buried, night after night, sitting beside his grave and mourning her loss. But one night, she disappeared without a trace. Some say her grief drove her to madness, and she took her own life in the graveyard. Locals say that on stormy nights, the widow can still be seen in the graveyard, pacing in her white gown, her face shrouded in shadow. Many visitors who've wandered the graveyard late at night have reported seeing her ghostly figure staring at them with empty eyes. Those who have encountered the widow's ghost often feel an overwhelming sadness, as though the grief she once felt has become part of the land itself. To this day, some claim to hear the soft sound of weeping when walking through the graveyard after dark. 15. Isle of May, the monk's ghost. The Isle of May is known for its scenic landscapes and historical ruins, but it is also home to a ghost that has haunted the island for centuries, a monk who is said to have perished under mysterious circumstances. The monk, who lived in the monastery on the island, was known for his deep devotion to prayer and his quiet, peaceful life. But one evening, he mysteriously vanished. Some say he was murdered by an unknown assailant, while others believe he was taken by supernatural forces. Years later, his ghost began to haunt the ruins of the monastery, visitors report seeing a lone figure in monk's robes walking the island's trails at dusk. One night, a group of hikers decided to spend the night on the island. They heard the sound of footsteps behind them, and when they turned, they saw the monk standing in the distance, motionless. As they approached, the monk disappeared into the mist, leaving nothing but the eerie echo of his footsteps in the distance. The monk's spirit continues to walk the island, his face obscured, and many believe he will never leave, bound to the island for eternity. If you love ghost stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more chilling tales from us.